What up? Welcome to Tiny Pirate Gaming's 10 tips and tricks for new players or anyone starting a new game in the Grounded Early Access. These ideas and these tips are designed to help you start your fresh game off in the best possible way so that you won't waste a lot of time and you can immediately start gathering and crafting the most essential resources that can aid you in your shrunken survival in the backyard.
Whoa, I'm not just small, I'm tiny. This is freaking awesome!
Tiny Pirate Gaming.
Number 1. So my first suggestion for anyone starting a new game or anyone who's experiencing Grounded for the very first time would be to collect and analyze 3 specific resources as soon as you start the game. The first of those would be the plant fiber. The reason I recommend analyzing the plant fiber is because once you analyze it, you will learn the recipe to craft crude rope. Crude rope is an essential resource that you're going to need to build almost everything as you progress further in the game. So the earlier you can learn the recipe to make crude rope, the better off you'll be. The next resource I highly recommend that you gather and analyze would be the pebblet. You can find pebblets all over the place. They even shine sometimes, so you can see them. They stick out a little bit. But the reason you want to analyze the pebblet is because it unlocks the recipe for the pebblet axe. The pebblet axe is an essential tool that you're going to need pretty much to cut down weeds and dandelions and grass so that you can use those materials to build stuff as you progress through the game. And the final resource that I recommend you analyze first would be the sprig. Now, the reason I say this is because by analyzing the sprig, you will unlock the recipe to craft the spiky sprig, which in my opinion is one of the best weapons you can have as soon as you start a new game. Now, if you're somebody who's comfortable using the pebblet axe as your primary weapon and you really don't think you need the spiky sprig, you can also choose to analyze the sap. Analyzing sap will unlock the recipe to build the workbench, and the workbench is a vital tool that you'll use to build even better armors and even better weapons and even better tools as you progress through the story and as you progress further into the game and gather new resources. But at the very start of the game, there's very little you can actually do with the workbench, which is why I recommend doing the sprig before you analyze the sap, just so you can build that spiky sprig. It might save your life.
I should keep searching and see what else I can turn up.
Number 2. My next suggestion would be to go find a dandelion, use the pebblet axe that you just crafted, and chop it down. Run to the very end of all the weed stems that fall over, and you should find 3 dandelion tufts laying on the ground. The Dandelion Tuft is currently the only glider available in the game, but it's not really so much as a glider as it is a parachute. It'll slow down your falls from very high distances so that you won't take fall damage, but it doesn't really have much range or distance if you try to use it as a glider. One more thing, once you pick up the Dandelion Tuft, don't forget to go into your backpack menu and equip it to your glider slot. Otherwise, it won't really do you any good. Number 3. As you play through the game of Grounded, you will be discovering new resources. New resources primarily come from stuff that you pick up off the ground, from defeating insects for the very first time, or from cracking open rocks or acorns with your hammer. These new resources that you collect can be taken to one of the many analyzers located all across the backyard. Analyzers can be found within the field stations and also the laboratories, and the analyzers are used to analyze new resources. When you analyze a resource that you haven't analyzed before, you will gain access to new crafting recipes, whether they be new building recipes, new tools, new weapons, new armors, things like that. Each analyzer has a cooldown time, and each analyzer can be used to analyze 3 items before it needs to cool down. The cooldown reset for the analyzer is about 20 minutes, so keep that in mind. And if you really need to analyze a lot more than 3 items, you can always go to one of the other analyzers at one of the other locations and use that one, as the cooldown time should be different for each one. Analyzing resources unlocks new crafting and building recipes, and analyzing a new resource also grants 20 raw science per analysis to the player. Raw science is basically an in-game currency, which allows the player to purchase upgrades and recipes later in the game, once you've completed the tutorial story missions at the very start. We'll be going over that a little bit later in the video. One more thing, if you're ever wondering which resources in your inventory need to be analyzed, you can always check the top left-hand corner of the resource slot, and if you see a red circle with an exclamation point in it, that signifies that that item has not yet been analyzed. Number 4. During the early tutorial missions of the game related to the mysterious machine, you will be required to go down into a cave that is filled with mites and an electrical cable. Your primary objective in that cave is to eliminate the mites that are attacking the electrical cable. But my tip, my suggestion, my recommendation is that while you're down there during the early parts of the game, you'll also want to collect quartzite. Quartzite is a reddish colored stone that you can crack open with your hammer, and it usually drops about 6 or 7 pieces of quartzite that you can then collect. The quartzite is a vital resource because it allows you to fix and repair any of your weapons or tools. Well, most of your weapons or tools. And in addition to that, you're not going to want to forget to take that piece of quartzite to an analyzer and have it analyzed. Analyzing quartzite unlocks the recipe to build the dew collector. The dew collector is a very important resource for ensuring that you always have access to clean, drinkable water to refill your thirst meter. Number 5. Due to the scale of the map, the thick forestry of grass, no minimap, no radar, and the player's shrunken size, it can be easy to get lost while playing through Grounded, especially if you're a new player. In order to prevent this, I highly recommend that you build trail markers all across the map. Trail markers can be built with 2 sprigs, 2 plant fibers, and 1 clover leaf. I personally like to build my trail markers at any of the buildings I build, or also at some of the landmarks I uncover. That way I can figure out where I am on the map in case it's dark and I don't necessarily recognize my surroundings, because to be quite honest with you, in a forest of grass, everything starts to look the same if you're surrounded by grass, especially if it's nighttime. What I think is really cool about the trail markers is that you can customize them with your own symbols and your own colors so that you'll know, oh, that's this location that I built, so I know where that is on the map. Helps you learn the locations and the landmarks and the layout a little bit better as you play through the game more and more. Another cool thing about the trail markers is if you build a lot of them like I have, there's icons popping up all over the map. But you can switch the icons from the trail markers on and off with a single button, which means if sometimes they feel too overwhelming, there's too many icons on your screen and you're getting confused and disoriented from that alone, you can just turn them off and only turn them on when you feel lost and you're like, oh, where's this place I'm trying to get to, or where was that trail marker? Oh, turn them on, you can say, there it is, turn them right back off, and you're off adventuring again. Number 6. This is a real quick one, and that is the grass planks and the weed stems that you haul on your shoulder in the game. These 2 should also be taken to the analyzer to be analyzed. They will teach you new crafting and building recipes, primarily for building fortresses or building structures. So if you're wondering, why don't I have this triangular floor or wall piece, it's probably because you have to analyze the grass plank or the weed stem. Number 7. As you're playing through the story quest of the game, you will be taken to Oak Lab for the very first time, and there you will be introduced to Burg.L, who is a miniaturized robot that can teach you new crafting recipes, as well as teach you new upgrades, depending on if you have the raw science needed to purchase them. Again, raw science is the in-game currency, and Burg.L is the guy that you trade with to learn the new stuff. So my next piece of advice is that the very first time you get to the Oak Lab, there are actually 4 raw science orbs that can be easily collected right off the bat. The first of them is in the bottom of the battery room. The second one is in the back part of the lab across from where you meet Burg.L. The next one is outside the breached wall of the lab near Burg.L. And the fourth one is down in the water outside of the breached wall. If you collect all 4 of those, you should be in a good place right at the start of the game. You should have enough currency to purchase what I'm about to talk about in the next tip. Number 8. In order for this next tip to be effective for you, you're going to need to have gathered at least 1,000 raw science. Once you have 1000 raw science and you've met Burg.L, you can discover sitting on the floor within Oak Lab right at his feet the Grasslands Burg.L chip. Pick it up and give it to him. Once you've given Burg.L the Grasslands Burg.L chip, he will learn multi-story bases in the swap shop. You can go into the swap shop, and for 1000 raw science, you can purchase multi-story bases, which will unlock building recipes for you, the most important of those being stairs and floors. Once you have stairs and floors, you can actually start to build significantly better fortifications and structures all across the backyard, which, to be quite honest with you, the building is half the fun of the game. So the sooner you can unlock stairs and floors recipes, the better your building experience will be. Number 9. So this next tip is a real easy one, and that is once you've gotten to Oak Lab and you've met Burg.L and you've explored the lab a little bit, if you head over to the dark side of the lab, the one that's across from where you first meet Burg.L, you will discover next to one of the doors a red button. If you press that button, it unlocks that door. Now, this won't really change much for you, except it creates a very small shortcut the next time you have to come to Oak Lab. You will frequently be returning to Burg.L in the future to accept daily quests, to turn in future Burg.L chips, and to purchase upgrades and recipes with raw science. So by opening this door, you will save yourself a little bit of time with future visits. One final thing, the only reason I decided to include this tip at all is because as a YouTuber who features the game Grounded on my channel, I sometimes monitor what other content creators are doing with the game. And I've noticed in watching some of their live streams and in watching some of their videos that no one's really done this. I see people running the long way all the way around the laboratory, so I just wanted to put it out there. There is a small shortcut that can really, it's just a brief quality of life improvement for you, and all you have to do it is press that little button. Just makes your trips to Burg.L a little bit quicker each time. Number 10. Finally, tip number 10 is if you need some extra raw science to purchase the multi-story bases, you can acquire it by analyzing newly discovered resources or by collecting raw science orbs that can be found scattered across the backyard. One of these raw science orbs can be found by climbing the twigs near the light on the house side of the oak tree and running along the edge of the light fixture to the other side. One way to know if you are close to a raw science orb is to listen for a distinct high-pitched humming sound that can be heard when an orb is nearby. And there you have it, 10 tips and tricks for new players or anyone starting a new game in Grounded during the early access. I hope these ideas and suggestions helped you out, and if they did, you could do me a huge favor by smashing that like button. And if you want to see future Grounded-related and Grounded-themed content here on Tiny Pirate Gaming, well, you could always consider hitting that red subscribe button and ringing that little bell so that you'll always be notified whenever I upload new videos here on Tiny Pirate Gaming. Thanks again so much for watching, and until next time...
Arg, matey, watch your step. There be a tiny pirate here.